There is a specific kind of frustration that only happens at night, when everything is quiet, when the world slows down, when it feels like the perfect time to pray. You sit there, you focus, you begin speaking with intention. But something feels off. Your words feel heavy. Your mind starts drifting. Your focus doesn't hold the way you expected. And instead of clarity, you feel resistance. Not loud, not obvious, but enough to make you stop and think. Why does this feel blocked? I've seen this pattern before, not just from the outside, but from a place where moments like this were observed very carefully. Because midnight was never random. It was always a time when people became more focused, more intentional, and more aware, but at the same time, more vulnerable to distraction, more sensitive to their own thoughts, and more likely to lose consistency. Now, here's what most people don't understand. The blockage is not always something external. It doesn't always come from outside forces. Most of the time, it happens within the moment itself, in your focus, in your thoughts, in how you respond when something feels slightly off. Because during midnight prayer, small interruptions feel stronger. A single distracting thought can pull your attention. A moment of hesitation can break your flow. A slight doubt can weaken your consistency. And once that happens, you feel like something is blocking you. But what's really happening is your alignment is being broken in real time. Now, this is important, because if you misunderstand the cause, you look for the solution in the wrong place. You'll think you need to pray longer. You'll think you need different words. You'll think you need something more complicated. But that's not the issue. The issue is what happens during the moment, when your focus starts to shift. So today, I'm going to show you exactly why your midnight prayers feel blocked. Not from assumption, but from understanding the patterns that interrupt them. And once you see it clearly, you'll know exactly how to respond and keep your focus from breaking again. Now, let's go to the exact moment where everything starts to shift. Because your midnight prayer doesn't suddenly become blocked all at once. It happens in a very specific way. Quietly, gradually, almost unnoticeably. When I was on the other side, this was the moment we paid the most attention to. Not when someone stopped praying, but when their focus broke for the first time. Because once focus breaks, everything else follows. Now here's how it begins. You start praying with intention. Your mind is steady. Your words are clear. But then a thought enters, random, unrelated, sometimes subtle enough that you barely notice it. It could be something from earlier in the day, something you need to do tomorrow, something you forgot, and for a second, your attention shifts. Now, this is the key moment. Most people don't respond here. They let the thought stay. They try to keep praying. But their attention is now divided. Part of them is speaking, part of them is thinking, and that division is where the interruption begins. Now understand this clearly. Focus divided is focus weakened. And once your focus weakens, your words lose clarity, your attention drifts more easily, your consistency breaks faster, your prayer starts to feel heavy. Not because something external stopped you, but because your focus is no longer fully aligned. Now, here's what usually happens next. You notice the distraction. You try to ignore it. But instead of removing it, you entertain it slightly. You think about it for a few seconds. You try to push it away. You go back and forth internally. And in doing that, you give it time, and time allows it to grow. Now your mind is no longer stable. It's moving between two directions. And that movement breaks your flow completely. Now, this is important because most people think the problem is that they got distracted. But that's not the real issue. The real issue is this: they didn't respond immediately when the distraction appeared. They allowed it to stay. And once it stays, it builds. Now, in the next chapter, I'm going to show you the deeper reason this happens, because this is not random. There is a pattern behind why your mind becomes more vulnerable at midnight. And once you understand that, you'll stop getting caught off guard by it. Now, this is where most people misunderstand what's happening, because they think the problem is the distraction itself. But the real issue is when it happens. Midnight is different, not because something mysterious is automatically blocking you, but because your mental state changes at that time. When I was on the other side, this was something we understood clearly. At night, your environment becomes quieter. There are fewer external interruptions, less noise, less movement. And because of that, your attention turns inward. Now, during the day, your focus is constantly pulled outward. Work, people, tasks. But at midnight, all of that slows down. And when it slows down, your thoughts become louder. Things you ignored earlier in the day start coming back. Unfinished tasks, unresolved conversations, lingering worries. And because your mind is quieter, those thoughts feel stronger. Now, here's the key. It's not that midnight creates the problem. It reveals what was already there. All the things you didn't deal with earlier now have space to appear. And when they appear during prayer, they compete for your attention. Now understand this clearly. Midnight doesn't weaken your prayer. It exposes your mental state. If your mind is clear, your focus holds. If your mind is full, distraction increases. And most people go into midnight prayer without clearing what they've been carrying all day. So when they start praying, their mind is already divided. Now add even one new thought, and the division increases. Now their attention is pulled in multiple directions. And that's when it starts to feel like something is blocking them. But what's really happening is internal overload. Now, this is important because if you don't understand this, you'll blame the wrong thing. You'll think something external is stopping you, when in reality, your mind is simply not prepared for focus. Now, in the next chapter, I'm going to show you the exact mistake people make in that moment. Because even when distraction appears, there is one reaction that makes it worse every time. And if you don't catch it, you will keep losing focus no matter how much you. Now, this is the part most people don't realize they're doing. Because the distraction itself is not what breaks your prayer. It's how you respond to it. When I was on the other side, this was the exact moment we relied on. Not the thought entering, but the reaction that followed. Because that reaction determined everything. Now here's the mistake. You try to fight the thought instead of redirecting your focus. The moment a distraction appears, you notice it. And instead of moving past it, you engage with it. You try to push it away. You argue with it. You tell yourself, stop thinking about this. But in doing that, you're still giving it attention. Now understand this clearly. Whatever you focus on, you strengthen, even if you're trying to resist it, because your attention is still there. Now your prayer has stopped, and your mind is locked into the distraction. Now here's what happens next. You go back and forth internally. Part of you is trying to pray. Part of you is still dealing with the thought, and that creates tension. Your words feel forced. Your focus feels unstable. Your attention keeps slipping, and slowly, you lose the flow completely. Now, this is why it feels like something is blocking you, because your attention is no longer aligned. It's divided. Now, here's the deeper problem. The more you fight the thought, the more aware of it you become. And the more aware you become, the stronger it feels. Now, instead of one small distraction, you've created a bigger one. Now, this is important because most people think they need to control every thought. They believe they must eliminate distraction completely. But that approach always fails because control through force creates resistance. And resistance keeps your attention locked in place. Now here's the shift. You don't fight the thought. You don't analyze it. You don't give it space. You simply remove your attention from it and return immediately. Because attention is what feeds it, and removing attention is what weakens it. Now in the next chapter, I'm going to show you exactly how to do this in real time, because knowing what not to do is one step. But having a clear, simple response in that moment is what keeps your prayer from breaking. Now this is where everything changes. Because once you understand the mistake, you need a clear, simple response to replace it. Not something complicated. Not something you have to think about, but something you can apply immediately, in the exact moment your focus starts to break. When I was on the other side, this was the turning point. Not whether someone avoided distraction, but whether they knew how to recover instantly when it appeared. So here's the correction. You don't fight the thought, you return your focus immediately. The moment a distraction enters, you don't pause, you don't analyze, you don't react emotionally. You simply bring your attention back to your words, to your focus, to your intention. Now, this is important. The speed of your response matters. If you take too long, the thought grows. If you respond instantly, it weakens. So the moment you notice your attention shift, you correct it immediately, no delay. Now here's the key. You don't need to say anything extra. You don't need to restart everything. You just continue with full attention again, because continuation is what restores alignment. Now let me explain this clearly. Think of your focus like a straight line. When a distraction appears, it pulls you slightly off that line. If you return quickly, you stay close to your direction. But if you stay distracted, you move further away. And the longer you stay there, the harder it is to come back. Now here's what happens when you apply this correctly. Your focus stabilizes faster. Your mind becomes quieter. Your words begin to flow naturally again. Not because distractions stop appearing, but because they don't stay long enough to break you. Now this is the shift. You stop expecting a perfect, distraction-free moment, and you start maintaining focus despite small interruptions. Because interruptions are normal, but losing control of your attention is not. Now in the next chapter, I'm going to show you how to prepare before you even begin. Because the strongest way to avoid broken focus is to reduce what your mind is carrying before you pray. And once you do that, everything becomes easier. Now this is the part most people skip. And because they skip it, everything becomes harder than it needs to be. Because the truth is this: your midnight prayer is only as strong as the state you bring into it. When I was on the other side, we didn't just watch the moment of prayer. We paid attention to what happened before it. Because if someone entered that moment already distracted, already overloaded, already carrying unresolved thoughts, then we knew their focus would break easily. And most of the time, it did. Now think about this. You go through an entire day filled with input, conversations, tasks, decisions, things you didn't finish, things you didn't resolve. And then suddenly, you sit down at midnight and expect your mind to be completely clear. But your mind doesn't reset automatically. It carries everything forward. So when you start praying, you're not starting from a place of clarity. You're starting from a place of mental carryover, and that carryover is what turns into distraction. Now here's the shift. You don't go straight into prayer. You prepare your mind first, not in a complicated way, but intentionally. You take a moment to slow down. You acknowledge what's on your mind. You decide what can wait until tomorrow. Because not everything needs your attention right now. Now, this is important. You're not solving every problem before you pray. You're simply not carrying everything into that moment. You're clearing space, even a little. Because even a small reduction in mental load makes a big difference in your focus. Now, here's a simple way to do this. Before you begin, pause. Sit still for a moment. Let your thoughts settle. If something keeps coming up, acknowledge it and set it aside intentionally. Tell yourself, I'll return to this later, and then you begin. Now, when you do this consistently, something changes. Your mind enters prayer calmer. Your attention holds longer. Distractions feel weaker and easier to release. Not because they disappear completely, but because you didn't bring as many with you. Now, this is the key. Preparation reduces resistance, and less resistance means stronger focus. Now, in the final chapter, I'm going to show you how to lock all of this in. Because once you understand the interruption, the mistake, and the correction, you need to make this your natural way of praying. And once that happens, your midnight prayers will no longer feel blocked. They will feel steady, clear, and consistent. Now, this is the final shift. And this is where everything becomes clear. Because up to this point, you've been trying to fix the problem. You've been learning how to handle distraction, how to correct your focus, how to prepare your mind. But now, you move beyond fixing. You move into stability. When I was on the other side, this was the difference we watched for. Not who could pray without distraction once, but who could hold their focus consistently. Because once someone reached that point, it became very difficult to break their flow again. Now understand this clearly. You are not trying to eliminate every distraction. You are training your mind to return quickly every time. That's the shift. Because distractions will still appear. Thoughts will still come. Moments of hesitation will still happen. But they will not control you if your response is consistent. Now, here's what this looks like in real time. You begin praying, your focus is clear. A thought appears. You don't react emotionally, you don't fight it. You simply return immediately. Your attention goes back to your words. Your direction stays the same. No delay, no internal struggle, no loss of control. Now, this is important because once your response becomes automatic, you don't lose your flow the same way. You don't feel blocked anymore because nothing stays long enough to block you. Now, here's what changes when you reach this point. Your mind becomes calmer. Your focus becomes stronger. Your prayers feel more direct and steady. Not because everything is perfect, but because your attention is stable. And stability is what creates consistency. Now, this is the final truth. Your midnight prayers are not blocked by something external. They are interrupted by unstable focus. And once your focus becomes stable, everything else follows. So don't chase perfect conditions. Don't wait for a moment with zero distraction. Train your response. Prepare your mind. Return your focus quickly. Stay consistent, because once that becomes your default, your prayers will no longer feel heavy or broken. They will feel clear, steady, and fully under your control. And that is the shift that changes everything. Now, this is the part most people ignore, and because they ignore it, nothing changes, not long term. When I was on the other side, this was the pattern we counted on. Not that people didn't understand the problem, but that they wouldn't stay consistent long enough to fix it. They would hear something like this. They would feel motivated. They would try it once or twice. And then they would stop. They would go back to praying the same way, carrying the same mental load, responding the same way to distraction. And within days, everything felt blocked again. Now here's the truth. Inconsistency is what keeps the blockage alive, not because your effort is wrong, but because it doesn't last long enough to create a new pattern. Now think about this. If you prepare your mind one night, but not the next, if you return your focus quickly sometimes, but not always, if you stay aware for a moment, but then go back to autopilot, then your results will always be unstable. Some nights feel clear. Some nights feel heavy. Some moments feel focused. Others feel scattered. And that inconsistency feels like something is blocking you. But what's really happening is your pattern is not stable yet. Now, this is important because most people expect instant change. They think, I tried this, why isn't it fixed? But patterns don't change instantly. They change through repetition, through consistency, through doing the same thing correctly, again and again. Now here's the danger of ignoring this. You start believing nothing works. You start thinking, maybe my prayers just don't go through. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe this is just how it is. And that belief stops you from trying again. Now the pattern stays. Not because it's strong, but because it's unchallenged. Now here's the shift. You stop expecting immediate perfection and you start building consistent response. Night after night, you prepare your mind. You respond quickly to distraction. You maintain your focus, even if it's not perfect. Because consistency creates stability, and stability removes the feeling of blockage. Now, this is the final warning. If you only apply this occasionally, nothing will change. But if you apply it consistently, everything will. Not overnight, but steadily. And that steady change is what breaks the pattern for good.